Welcome to another edition of the Champions Round Show. My name is Jason Gold, and as always, I am joined by Dan Titus. Dan, how are we doing today?
Doing great, bro. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. A couple announcements from Champions Round before we get started here with some preseason week one action, and we're going to do a little bit of a mock draft action a little bit later. This will be the last podcast known officially as the Champions Round Show. We're going to change the name and debut that sometime next week. And we are also going to release a gambling show that Dan is going to be on. We are hyped for that. Also, congrats to you, Dan. Full-time role at the Action Network. We're happy to see you over there. Love those guys over there. So if you want to see more from Dan outside of the two shows here, go check him out on Action Network. He's doing great things over there, and they always have the best bets to follow, all that sort of stuff. So keep it locked in with Dan over there.
For sure. And we're going to be giving even more fire content here just because everything that's going on in the Champions Round on top of, the handicapping that we can do here with the fantasy blend, it's different, unique content. So I'm really excited for the future here.
All right. So we are going to be debuting a couple of products next week. As we release our two podcasts, we have 3 products that are going to come out sometime around August 25th. We would not wait for everybody to download the app. Come join us, play some cash games, win some money. Hopefully don't get beat too badly by your friends. If you're playing with us, you're probably going to get your ass beat, but don't talk about that too much. All right, so let's move on to a little bit of football. That's why we're here. We're firmly in draft season right now, and we got a little taster. We got week 1 preseason. We went all the way through. So I want to start with a couple of thoughts on the preseason. And first off, let's talk about some of the quarterback battles. There's 5 of them that are going on right now that are pretty hot and heated. And after seeing a couple of the rookies play, I'm a little tempted to throw them into the fire starting week 1. Let's start in Chicago with Justin Fields and Andy Dalton. Matt Nagy seems to have a plan where he is not going to play Justin Fields. He is firmly on the Patrick Mahomes. You're going to sit out a year track. But Andy Dalton is not Alex Smith, and this is not the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a team that desperately needs a spark. I personally think that Justin Fields can provide it. He was electric in the preseason week 1. I know he only played a half, and he's playing against scrubs, but he still looked awesome. He's super dynamic. What were your thoughts on the Bears QB situation after seeing Fields play in preseason week 1?
Yeah, what I saw was he came out a little bit nervous like any other rookie would, but he really settled in, man. He finished the game out with 14 for 20 for 142 yards and a touchdown. Did have 1 fumble, but he also rushed 5 times for 33 yards and another touchdown, amounting to a 106.7 QB rating, and he also got the W. So, I think you already see what the upside is here. And from a fantasy perspective, and we'll talk about it with Trey Lance here very shortly, but I think that there's a play where maybe you don't have to get a top 12 quarterback in fantasy. You draft the upside of a Trey Lance or Justin Fields, expecting that they're eventually going to take the field. You get a dual threat quarterback that's going to cost you much less than like a Jalen Hurts, a Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, etc. And I thought what I saw was fantasy gold. And you put around him the weapons of David Montgomery, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and I think you have a really good fantasy quarterback there in Chicago, which right now, Andy Dalton, I just read from a beat writer today that he's not letting up his spot yet. It's his time. Spoiler alert, it's been your time. Your time was in Cincinnati. Your time is over. It's Justin Fields' time. It's only a matter of weeks. So I think right now, from a betting perspective, I think it'd be a really cool bet to say which one's going to start first. But right now, I think Justin Fields might have a slight edge.
So I'm pretty sure that based on every comment that I've seen from Matt Nagy, that Andy Dalton's going to start week 1, which, to be honest, is horribly stupid, but that's okay. There's no reason that you shouldn't put Fields in there. And I understand he was with Mahomes. He was the OC for the transition year from Smith to Mahomes. I get it. And he sees that. He saw the success it had. But this is a totally different situation. I find it really hard to link up the two of those situations. They're very different teams at very different points in their arc. And they're very different players. Andy Dalton is not Alex Smith. The Bears team does not have a chance to go that. Kansas City Chiefs team went 13-3. They were awesome. They had a chance to legitimately go to the Super Bowl with Alex Smith. You don't change over them. This Bears team with Andy Dalton is trash. It's like a 7-10 team. if Justin Fields gets smoking, could be a playoff team. You don't know. So I would play him earlier rather than later. I do think that your idea of drafting Fields or Lance late in drafts and then pairing him with someone who's going to start week one that's not exciting at all, like say Matt Ryan, like
Perfect
just get
example.
put in Matt Ryan. You can get him in like the 12th round of standard redraft leagues. Like no one cares about picking Matt Ryan. He's like QB 15 or whatever.
Right.
Go get him. Start him for 4 weeks until Justin Fields is firmly entrenched, and then Fields is going to be a QB1. He'll be a top 12 guy the day he walks on the field. Whether or not that translates to wins for the Bears, I don't know yet. But he's going to run the ball enough, like Hurts last year. Hurts completed 52% of passes. He wasn't that good throwing the ball, but he was like a top 4 QB in fantasy because the guy runs and he scores touchdowns. Like that's all you need in fantasy. So I'm firmly with you on that idea. Yeah, I love that. And another guy that we can talk about here, Fields, and then we have Lance. So Trey Lance, for me, would be a little bit scary to put into that same situation. I'm very confident that Fields is going to start this year and probably start earlier rather than later. He'll probably be the starter by week 8 at like the latest. If Jimmy Garoppolo is like actually healthy and good, I don't know that Lance is going to play that much this year other than situational packages. It kind of reminds me almost to throw it back to the 49ers late in the day and use Alex Smith as another example.
Yeah.
Like when they had Alex Smith and they knew that eventually they would go to Kaepernick, but they didn't know when, and they used him in running packages, and he was fairly effective doing that. That feels like what Lance is this year, unless Garoppolo gets hurt. And then Lance is like, it's going to be like the full Wally Pipp situation for the Yankees where either Lou Gehrig or Joe DiMaggio never gave the position back. So I think that Lance, it's a little bit dicier to go into that situation with him. But that being said, preseason week 1, he looked like Mahomes out there with one of his passes. It was absolutely unbelievable. What were your thoughts on Lance, and what do you think about him in fantasy this year?
Yeah, I think when I first saw Trey Lance's not only his build, but what he was doing in the pre-combine and like draft workouts, he really gave me Kaepernick vibes. And I think you saw that right on display. And it's not just because I'm associating him with the Niners, but big arm, very rangy. The way that he runs like a gazelle, covers a lot of ground. But I mean, damn, he had like an 80-yard touchdown pass, finished the game, only 5 for 14. So he definitely struggled to kind of get a rhythm. He did take 4 sacks, which you'll want to see. Obviously, that's him just getting used to the speed and the physicality of the game. But, ultimately, I think you see his upside. The run game, the big arm. He's got the weapons with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, George Kittle is there. I think he actually makes this offense more dynamic. And Kyle Shanahan can then do more creative things in that run-pass offense to really build out this offense. Because right now, we know what we're going to get with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a game manager, and really is just an extension of like an Alex Smith, dink and dunk guy, but really can't stay on the field. So I think Trey Lance's upside is really hinges on Garoppolo's availability. And I think one thing has been proven, Garoppolo can't stay healthy. So it's only a matter of time before Lance might see the field. I just think that there's more trust in the brass from a front office standpoint in Garoppolo than the Bears have for Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. So I think you're right. I think Justin Fields is going to probably be the rookie outside of the obvious Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson to really see the field as a rookie.
Would you take Fields over Lawrence and Wilson in fantasy, given his upside?
I think I would, because the thing about Jacksonville, I can't really get a read on all of their weapons. Like, I'm not investing in Jaguars on my fantasy team as much as like they'll probably be playing from behind and have some really positive game scripts. I don't know that I can get behind Trevor Lawrence with Marvin Jones and DJ Shark and Etienne Chanel. There's just so many players there. I don't know what Urban Meyer looks like. And then Zach Wilson, while I think that the Jets are going to be a lot better than they've been in the past, because anything without Adam Gase is a plus, right? But I don't know what Zach Wilson's really going to be. He had a really good debut as well. I think he made some really nice passes. I think you saw what his gunslinging attributes really kind of what he got touted for coming out of college. But I don't know that I want to sign up for that yet. I think I'd rather invest in Justin Fields and or Trey Lance just based off of that opportunity with the assets around them in pretty good franchises.
I was watching Trevor Lawrence play his preseason game week 1, and you ever have those times where you're about to send out a tweet and you're like, nah, this might be on Old Takes Exposed at some point? I had one of those moments. I was watching him throw the ball, and he was struggling moving around the pocket and throwing the ball down the field a little bit, although he had a nice completion to Marvin Jones. But I was like, he might be the 4th best quarterback in this draft class for a guy that we thought was one of the 4 best all-time prospects.
I don't think that. The law of numbers, though, like, are all of these quarterbacks going to hit? Like, there's been very notable busts in the top 3, of the NFL draft. So, not to say that, like, I feel you. Like, last thing I want to do is be on the Old Takes Exposed. But if you look at the eye test, man, I think there's just some other guys that just jump off the page a little bit more than Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence is like never lost in his entire career of playing football. So I don't know. I don't think his scenario, a lot of this is like where you end up, your environment. And to me, that's not a winning franchise. Like, when's the last time the Jaguars were relevant? Like Mark Brunell and like
they had the one Blake Bortles year.
Fred's. Oh, true. You're right. The one.
But outside of that, it's been a while.
That team was really garbage. That was their defense, right? It was never an offensive thing. So at this point,
they did score like 45 against Pittsburgh and like the AFC divisional round or something like that. But it was like a really ridiculous game. I don't even remember. I just remember it was like 45-42. It made no sense at all. Anyways, my point about Lawrence is like I'm not prepared to go there yet. It was one preseason game. Like, cool, the Jets. I don't need to make my biggest hot take of my life after preseason week 1. But what I'm saying is there are reasons to think that maybe he won't be the best quarterback in this draft class. And more specifically, his attributes in terms of being a quarterback, tall, good arm, smart player, comes from a winning program. Like, does that stuff matter in the modern NFL as much as it used to? Like, I feel like the guys that are really succeeding, the young guys like the Mahomes and Herberts and Lamars and Dax, like these guys have one of 2 incredible skills. They either have unbelievable arms or they run like crazy. And because of that, the whole field opens up and they're able to complete passes. I don't know if Lawrence does either of those as much as we know Wilson has the absolute cannon. And we know that Fields and Trey Lance will be able to run all over the field. Fields actually has an electric arm too. And I guess Lance does also after seeing that too. So in terms of the attributes, I'm just not sure that Lawrence measures up, but he might be the smartest one on the field. And we've seen with guys like Brady and Manning, if you're smarter than everybody else, sometimes it doesn't matter.
Right. But that doesn't always translate to fantasy value, right?
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, so getting back to the fantasy point here, I would take Fields over every other rookie for sure. I think he's going to play more than anyone else. You're right. Like I don't want to bet on Lawrence. I don't want to bet on the Jaguars offense. Wilson's going to sling the rock around, and I hope that he feeds it to Elijah Moore a lot. But like, is he going to be, putting up like 30 touchdowns this year? I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, was Corey Davis going to have 10 plus touchdowns? Like, I mean, he's good, but I don't know that I'm projecting him to go off, Elijah Moore to go off. Denzel Mims becomes I don't know about all that.
Denzel Mims, wide receiver 6 on the Jets, and people are still buying his stock. It's unbelievable. All right, we have there's 3 more quarterback battles, one of which we'll hit on quickly. It looks like Carson Wentz is going to be back for Indianapolis maybe in the first couple of weeks of the season, so maybe this one is a little bit irrelevant. But Jacob Eason and Sam Ehlinger, like, both looked really good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Eason had the highest PFF grade for all quarterbacks week 1 in preseason, and Ehlinger just ran him down the field for a game-winning touchdown and looked like, I mean, he's played a lot of big games in Austin. He looked like he was ready for the moment. So if Wentz isn't able to play, who do you like to go week 1? And do you think that these guys have any value around the league now? Or are we just saying it was week 1 preseason, it doesn't matter at all?
Yeah, I'm going to take it as week 1 preseason, doesn't really matter at all. But from a dynasty perspective, I mean, I think you got to feel pretty good about locking up Eason in there. I thought he looked good, just in terms of the fact that he seems to be ahead of Ehlinger on the depth chart here. But I'm not really buying into any quarterback beyond, Carson Wentz, and I'm pretty timid on my expectations on him as well. But you got to expect. I mean, Wentz hasn't had a healthy season in about 3 or 4 years now, so there's a good chance that these guys could actually see the field. So I think if you do have some shares of these guys, I think it's a solid bench stash to have in your reserve in the event that Wentz goes down. You might be able to plug and chug for a super flex league, 2 quarterback type of thing. But redraft, I'm staying away, far and away from any kind of Colts quarterback.
Absolutely. All right, let's go over to New England. Cam Newton, the arm's still a little shaky here. I think that he's probably going to start the season. I think that they probably feel a little bit more confident with him just heading into the first couple of weeks of the season. But it seems like, based on what we saw from 1 week, it's going to be Mac Jones' show at some point during the season. How do you value Newton and Mac Jones in fantasy, and which do you think should start week 1?
It's a good question. I think Cam Newton still has a leash, but it's probably going to be a relatively short leash. And I think it's really going to be predicated on the fact of whether he can throw the ball. He couldn't throw. I mean, he was a beast on the ground. Like we saw, like he continues to be one of the top 10, or top 5, top 3, quarterbacks in the red zone. And he's going to be valuable from a fantasy perspective. Like if you want to punt or stream fantasy quarterbacks, you still get the dual threat ability of Cam Newton. The problem is he just doesn't produce very, very many passing touchdowns. So if this offense sputters a bit, if they're able to run the ball, I don't see why they would go to Mac Jones just yet. But if they get down, perhaps they're playing from behind a lot and Cam can't bring you back, that's when insert Mac Jones. Because I think we saw from a preseason matchup, he went 13 for 19 for 87 yards, did take a sack, but I'll be honest, like he was accurate, and that's what you need. You need someone that can move the ball down the field, hit the mid-level routes and receivers, which is what Cam never had touch, and he can't make those short intermediate throws, which I think Mac Jones has proven that he can do. So right now, I think it's just an audition. Cam Newton's got the job, but if he falters at all, I think that they'll turn to Mac Jones, and I think the New England base is really excited to see him after what they saw in week 1 of the preseason.
Yeah, I think Mac's going to be the starter sooner rather than later. I mean, I love Cam. I've won a lot of fantasy championships with Cam as my quarterback. And I still think you're right. In the red zone, he still produces not only from a team perspective, but a fantasy perspective. But this is a passing league. And if you're not able to complete balls, I mean, the arm it's unfortunate for him. It just seems like the arm's gone. Right. There's not much you can do with that. You could be the smartest dude in the world. It's like, look at Peyton Manning the last year of his career, right? Like his shoulder fell off. There's no more timing routes on that. There's only so much you can do when the arm's not there. So I think it's probably the Mac show at some point. I kind of like drafting both of them, especially in like a best ball league, just getting both of their skill sets, throw them as your QB2 down the roster. And I think that Mac will be serviceable. I don't think that you're going to get into problems having Mac Jones as your quarterback. The upside is just not there at all. Like you would have Cam. No, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to add that there's also a weapons problem in New England as well, right? Yeah. You got Jacoby Myers is primarily their main receiver right now. At least he's the one that's drawing the most eyes in camp. N'Keal Harry's a disaster. I don't like who knows what that draft stock has gone. I think he's demanded one to trade earlier in the preseason, so wouldn't be surprised if he's not relevant. But then you got like James White, and that's and Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, but they're both kind of getting nicked up already. So like I'd just be worried that they don't have enough weapons to actually produce fantasy value respectively in 1 QB leagues or redraft leagues right now, unless they take the reins off and let Mac Jones just sling it. But I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think this is going to be a running team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only strategy or one of them, I guess, in Dynasty or Superflex or 2 QB, anything like that, is to take Cam late, hope that he pops week 1, and then sell him immediately with the thought that he's going to be the starter of the rest of the year. I'm only saying that because I have him in a league where I'm depending on him as my QB2, him and a guy we're going to get to next. And I'm hoping that one of them pops early so I can get rid of them so quickly.
Yeah, the next one's probably the best QB battle that we have right now, right? Because this is like a legitimate who is it going to go to? So
we're in New Orleans. We got Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. I have no idea what they're going to do. Taysom started week 1. Jameis is going to start week 2. I don't think that Sean Payton's going to give anything away before the first snap of the first game of the regular season. It seemed like Winston won round 1 based on the stats, and the Saints kind of struggled with Hill at quarterback. But it's tough with them because if Michael Thomas was in, I feel like Jameis gets the job because they're going to want to pass the ball down the field a little bit more.
Right.
Without Michael Thomas in there, do they just give it to Taysom and just like, okay, we're running the ball 90% of the time? Like when Lamar came in, the first year that he had, when they only started like 6 games and made the playoffs, right? There's like, we're running it 80% of the time. I don't care. Stop us. Do they just do that with Taysom and Kamara? Or they're like, oh, we actually need like a real quarterback. Here's Winston.
Yeah, it's a good question because I think we saw last year that like Taysom Hill, even if you scheme around him not as a traditional quarterback, he's still really valuable in terms of scheming an offense and actually winning games. So he's not a bad quarterback by any means, but like Jameis Winston definitely gives you the ability to, if you're playing from behind or you need to get downfield, produce points. Like I think you could get there faster, if you're not in a controlling the clock situation with Jameis Winston. He's a gunslinger. He's proven that he can throw for a lot of yards, can make those difficult throws. The problem with Winston has always been his decision-making. And I think so far reports have been pretty positive that he's improved his IQ, his decision-making, that type of stuff. So I got to feel like Jameis Winston has the slight edge on Taysom Hill. But at the same time, I think he's still going to be fantasy relevant. So if you're looking in a best ball draft, you got to take Taysom Hill as like a late quarterback, because even if he's not like the full starting quarterback, he's still going to have opportunities around the red zone to get you some sneaky points in a bind. So the upside is to me, he's one of the best handcuff quarterbacks that you can have for QB upside. Like, I mean, because we talk about dual threats, he can throw the ball, but he's really makes his bread and butter on the ground. And this guy, at the detriment of Alvin Kamara last year, he could really be a fantasy gold mine if he gets the keys to that offense.
No, absolutely. I'm interested to see if Sean Payton will do a classic college 2 QB system, because they do such unique things that
right.
you can utilize them individually. And if Winston is the quarterback, you're right. There's no way that Hill doesn't have a role on that team as a H-back, running back, tight end, whatever he's played with Drew Brees. If Taysom is the starting quarterback and does this thing that he did when Drew Brees was out last season, does Winston have a role in 2-minute drills? If they're behind, do they go to Jameis Winston because they need to throw the ball a lot? I'm interested to see if he just says, screw it, we don't need a starting quarterback, all situationally dependent, just like we do all of our other players on the roster. Screw it. Taysom, if we're ahead, you're the guy. If we're behind, Jameis, you're the guy.
I think they're both preparing for that, right? Because the fortunate thing is they've both been in, Taysom Hill's never had the full-time job. So he's always been in this ready mode. Like, yo, I need you in this situation. Jameis Winston's been playing this, this game of, am I a starting quarterback? Am I not? So I feel like they're both ready to go, which is going to be a very interesting test case for, can they actually run a 2 quarterback system in some form or fashion and actually find success? I think I think we're going to see it.
I can't wait to see what happens. The Saints, is a team that I have not for a long time been interested in watching that much. I know what's going to happen. Drew Brees was there, Kamara's there, Michael Thomas is there, whatever.
Right
now, anything's going to happen. So I'm super excited to see what they have going down in New Orleans. Last thing before we move on to our little mock draft, were there any players that really stood out during week 1? From a fantasy perspective that we might want to buy in on?
Yeah, I think you got a backup running back here that, isn't commonly mentioned in the handcuff territory. He's definitely mentioned in dynasty formats, but I think we need to start considering him for redraft. And that's Chuba Hubbard. And this dude broke off like a sick, 80+ yard run, ran through the tackles, busted a few. And I think that this is to me, Christian McCaffrey hasn't proven that he can stay healthy, right? He's got a lot of tread on his tires in just a short amount of time. And we know the volatility at the running back position. If he goes down, it's his backfield. So to me, I think you got to start ranking him in the Tony Pollard, the Alexander Madison, categories of backup stashes to handcuff.
I find that very not only interesting and compelling, but I would definitely do the same thing because of McCaffrey's injury history. And they don't really have a backup beyond Hubbard. And Hubbard was a guy that Matt Rule specifically targeted in the draft. This is a guy he wanted, who he played against in the Big 12, who he respected his game. And I think that, yeah, you're right. If McCaffrey goes down, I think Hubbard's going to step right into that role, just like Mike Davis. He's going to end up being an RB1. So, yeah, I definitely, I'm with you there. A couple of guys who stood out to me, Terrace Marshall looks like a monster already. Beast. So sticking with the Panthers, he's going to be their third wide receiver. If either DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson goes down, like Marshall could have a massive year. And don't forget, like when they had Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase at LSU, like Marshall was still producing big games. So he's definitely a talented wide receiver. KJ Hamler had a massive game against the Vikings. Drew Lock actually looked surprisingly good, which is a QB battle we didn't talk about because nothing makes me more miserable than talking about Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. But KJ Hamler looked good, and he kind of has like that Deshaun Jackson thing going on, which is absolutely taking the roof off of defenses. So something to look out for there, especially in Mile High, where Drew Lock can launch at about 70 yards. And the last one was a super sleeper that I talked about probably on our draft podcast, but former UCLA running back Demetric Felton had 4 catches for 55 yards for the Browns. Playing wide receiver and not running back. I don't know what's going to happen with the Browns wide receivers. Donovan Peoples-Jones also looked really good. They got a bunch of bodies there, but if they need kind of this combo back, I think that Felton has a small role, and I would be buying him in dynasty leagues because I think that at some point he's going to have a big breakout for the Browns this year.
It's a great point. I mean, Nick Chubb, he got hurt last year, and we saw other names like Dearness Johnson getting time last year. So, there's definitely a path to playing time if someone goes down. Just want to go back to Terrace Marshall real quick. Curtis Samuel had 97 targets last year with a healthy Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. So I think you could slot him in as a legitimate wide receiver 3. He should be rostered in redraft formats just off the strength of the fact that they don't really have a red zone target right now. And DJ Moore, while he gets all of the yak yards and can really beat you in between the seams, he doesn't really have that red zone potential. Neither does Robbie Anderson. He's more of the big play, deep hitter. So I think if you get into the red zone outside of CMC, Terrace Marshall is definitely a good option for them, just given his size, like 6'4" beast. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of upside there.
Well, now I'm taking him one round earlier because you're in on him too. Let's go. All right, let's move over. We're going to do a mock draft. First one we're going to do of this, and we'll put it out on social afterwards. We got 10 teams, half PPR, so we're going to go through 40 players. And Dan, you got the first pick here.
Yeah, after I just talked shit on him too. I'm going to go CMC. I think we're talking half-point PPR here. Injuries don't exist. Everything's created equal. This is the best player in fantasy football, just in terms of sheer volume. The offense runs through him, and it's only going to continue. This guy sees more receptions than your best receiver, as well as still getting running back, getting carries into the volume of 300 totes a year. So I think if this guy can stay healthy, he's the bona fide number 1 player off the board. So don't think twice about it. You could go with a Dalvin Cook. Sure, that's great. Has a little bit less mileage, but I think CMC has proven that he can be fantasy's best player. So I got to take him 1 overall.
CMC is a clear number 1 for me also. Actually, number 2 was tough for me. I'm pretty split on what to do here between Kamara and Cook. And the reason that I'm going to go Kamara here is just because Michael Thomas is out. And I just think that his receptions that he's going to get in the first eight weeks of this season is going to push him past Dalvin Cook. Now, they're going to stack the box around the Saints running game. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be, so that obviously that could be an issue. Cook is a little bit safer, I would say. But I think the upside in Kamara, without any of the other weapons there, and his speed and versatility, just how good he is as a player, I'll take him at number 2 and try to take the upside.
Yeah, I mean, look at what Kamara did last year, for the first, but before that suspension, before he got the actual time, as Latavius Murray was working his way back, this guy was fantasy beast. He was the RB1 for such a long time. And I think with Drew Brees gone, they got to depend on the run a little bit more, especially with that uncertainty at the quarterback position. So makes a lot of sense. And I like it. I like the boldness of taking Kamara number 2. And I got to take Dalvin Cook. I'm surprised that he would fall to 3, but at this point, if you're looking at volume and a true 3-down back, there's only so many of them in the NFL right now, and Dalvin Cook is one of them. With this offense, you have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson on the outside to really keep defenses honest. But Dalvin Cook is very effective in the pass game just as much as he is in the run game. And for me, I think he's a bona fide top 3 pick. No matter how you slice it, Dalvin Cook's got to be in that conversation.
Absolutely. I would take Cook 3 there ahead of who I picked 4th, which is Derrick Henry. The guy is an absolute beast. He's going to get 300 carries this year. He's going to score touchdowns from all over the place. I think that his upside probably is a little bit diminished that Julio's there, just because I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit more. But that being said, like his rushing totals and total rushing volume may go down, but his touchdowns may increase, that they're going to be in the red zone more often. Also, it helps that the Titans defense might be kind of trash this year. They're going to have to play a little bit more offense. He might actually get a couple more receptions in here. So I'll go with Henry, and I think that there's pretty clearly a top 4, and then there's a relatively decent drop off from 4 to 5.
Yeah, I'd agree. And for 5, I think that this is where the conversation gets a little bit interesting. I'm going to take Aaron Jones here because this is the twilight tour of Aaron Rodgers and potentially Devontae Adams in Green Bay. But one thing is for certain and determined is that Aaron Jones is going to get workload. This guy's had 1,400 all-purpose yards in his last 2 seasons, over 200 carries in each of those, but he's also very active in the pass game. So, if you're looking for a stable floor, it's really Aaron Jones here. And, he just got the bag in the offseason. Jamal Williams is out of there, which opens up a little bit more opportunity for A.J. Dillon in that kind of a, change of pace role. But I think this really runs through Aaron Jones. And we've seen with the Packers' reluctance to add any weapons on the outside or really give him competition in the backfield, it's his. So I like Aaron Jones here at 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think that I would take Jones over who I took at 6, which is Saquon Barkley, just because I think it's a little bit safer. And Barkley, look, I could make an argument for Barkley going 5th, and I could also make an argument for Barkley going like 12th right now, given his injury concerns. Like, I don't know if he's going to be back week 1, 2, or 3. The Giants' offensive line stinks. They have playmakers all the way around now. Like, they have receivers, so maybe he's going to find less people in the box. If Daniel Jones doesn't improve, though, like, you're limiting the upside on Barkley, and we haven't seen him do it in a while. So, yeah, you have to take the upside. We've seen what he can do before. He has legitimate abilities to be the running back 1 and maybe the best player in fantasy this year if everything broke right. So you kind of have to take that upside at 6. But if you don't want to risk it with the injuries, go ahead and take Travis Kelce or Jonathan Taylor or Joe Mixon or Zeke Elliott. Like, I get it. I don't really have a problem with anyone doing that here.
Yeah, I'm off the Saquon train only because of that volatility, man. Like, the offensive line, but that's the thing about Saquon is that you can have a really bad running game and he's still going to be very effective in the pass game despite adding those weapons on the side. So, I think he's still going to be poised for a really good season, but you can't deny the fact that he's probably going to be eased into his role at the onset just because, he had that significant ACL tear and still working his way back. But yeah, get off the PUP list, great sign. And I think he's going to eventually be in that top 10 conversation as the year ends.
Absolutely.
So for the next guy, I'm gonna go Jonathan Taylor. We talked about him at length the last couple of weeks just because of all the changes that have happened between the announcements of Quentin Nelson going down and Carson Wentz. But I think ultimately it's shaking out that they're both going to be ready for week 1. So if you were able to buy the dip, awesome. Congratulations to you. But I think Jonathan Taylor has to be within your first 8 selections just because this guy, he's young, he's got the offense, he's got a shaky quarterback, which is going to definitely want to hand off the ball. Frank Reich has definitely showed a commitment to the run game, despite having Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins also involved in the offense. This offense really goes as far as Jonathan Taylor can take them. So I think Jonathan Taylor probably has the closest 3 down back upside besides Joe Mixon that's remaining in this top tier of running backs. And I know that might be a slight hot take considering that Ezekiel Elliott and Nick Chubb are still on the board, but I'll let you handle that Zeke conversation.
We'll get there in a little bit. 8th pick overall, Travis Kelce, biggest game changer in the fantasy football game is having the best tight end in the league, especially if they're going to lap the field in terms of fantasy points. I think that Kelce, I don't know how long this is going to last, how long his run is going to be. He's 32 years old, but I don't think it ends this year. I think you're talking about another 90 reception, 1,200 yard, double-digit touchdown season. And I will gladly take Kelce here. The only thing that it changes for me is you're going to have to take a little bit of risk on running back a little bit later if you take him in the first round. And you might want to consider grabbing a quarterback a little bit earlier, a.k.a. do you want to pair Patrick Mahomes and Kelce? Because that might be the best scenario if you're going to go tight end this early to get the double points there. But, yeah, if you want to take Kelce anywhere from like 6 on, I basically have no problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with taking Kelce in the first round in general just because you're getting positional value there. Because, like, there's only going to be a handful of people that are going to be able to win you weeks out of that tight end position, and Kelce is more than likely going to finish in the tops of that category each and every week. So it pays to definitely have that positional advantage over your league mates.
All right, you got number 9.
Let's see here. Austin Eckler. And, I've seen a lot of positive reviews coming out of Chargers camp, mostly, though, Justin Jackson. Joshua Jackson was this Mighty Ducks. But Justin Jackson's a disaster. He's on the roster bubble. Then you have Joshua Kelly, who's also hasn't really proven out to be much either. And then you got their drafted rookie, Larry Roundtree, who could find some fancy relevance, but all that to say, that's a signal to me that this is going to be Austin Eckler's backfield. You have a rookie to compete with and literally no one else. Your offensive line has been improved. We saw how Justin Herbert can sling the rock, and you know that he's still going to have some kind of presence, a lot of presence in that passing game. So you put that with his rushing upside here, which is definitely had a lot to be desired considering he got hurt last year. But in the times that he was there, he was one of the best backs in football. So I think he's earned the right to be a top 10 pick. And I think I'm really excited for what his upside will bring in a full season, potentially in an explosive offense.
Yeah, I love Austin Eckler this year. My 10th and 11th pick here, Joe Mixon, will be pick 10. I love Mixon this year. I think his upside is through the roof. 3 down back. He doesn't have any competition. That offense is going to be playing from behind a lot. I know they have a lot of great receivers, and the offensive line is a little bit shaky, but if Mixon's healthy, I just think it's going to be a massive year. Number 11, Zeke Elliott. I think this is the point at which I kind of reach my breaking point and have to take him. He's not even the best running back on his own team, but the coaches don't know that, so he's going to get fed. And, I mean, he's Zeke. Like, he's going to experience some positive touchdown regression. He should have had like 11 or 12 last year based on the carries in the red zone. I think he'll see that go up. I could see him scoring a lot of touchdowns this year, but being less productive on a play-to-play basis. Also, I think he's going to see the ball a little bit less catching the ball. I think the Pollard's a little bit more involved. And between Lamb, Gallup, and Amari Cooper, there's a lot of mouth to feed, not to mention their tight end. So a little bit down on Zeke this year, but I think once you get to 11, he's just going to get so much volume. Otherwise, you kind of have to think about taking him here.
Yeah, I think to get him in the second round makes a lot of sense. And, I don't expect him to fall very far after that turn. And rightfully so. I mean, he's on one of the most explosive offenses in the game. So just by nature of that and his proven volume over the years, he should be that pick. And I'm going to go with Devontae Adams right after that, first wide receiver off the board. And I think rightfully so, man. Like, Aaron Rodgers is definitely only looking his way. He's a target hog monster, however you want to deem it. He's the best receiver in the game. And when Aaron Rodgers is at his best, that's when Devontae Adams flourishes. And I think he's earned the right to be the top receiver off the board. And taking here early in the second round, I think is pretty good value considering if you're able to get a running back in that first round.
Absolutely. I love Devontae Adams here at pick 12. Antonio Gibson would be my pick at number 13. I love Gibson this year. There are rumors out there this week. I believe Kyle Allen said that he's going to have the Christian McCaffrey type role in this offense. Okay, well, rockets went off in my head. Let's go get Antonio Gibson here. And I actually think that if you're going to get in this is the 8th pick here, so I took Kelsey first and then Antonio Gibson. Like that's a perfect combo. You have RB1 upside and you have the best tight end in the league. I would be happy with that start. Basically in any league. I think Gibson's going to be in store for a giant year this year.
Yeah, he's one of the rapid risers, and I think the signaling's been there since they drafted him that he's going to be viewed by Ron Rivera and that staff as a CMC light. And I think you're only hearing more rave reviews about what he's doing in the passing game, how he continues to improve in the run game. So yeah, I think he's going to be a fantasy beast this year. And I'm going to go Tyreek Hill with the 14th pick in the second round and a 14th pick overall, mainly because he's in a contract year. He's playing with the best quarterback in football, that is Patrick Mahomes. And, he's only the second receiver to go off the board here. And I think you'll probably realize a theme just in general in redraft leagues is that these running backs are going to fly off the board. So potentially you could have a really nice wide receiver stack if you wait on these wide receivers here. They could just kind of fall into your lap. And Tyreek Hill, we know what his upside is. I think he'll experience some touchdown regression this year. Just mainly because, he had 17 last year, and he did almost lead the league in terms of wide receivers. So, to expect him to do that again, probably not, but he's still going to have a monster year in one of the best offenses, period.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Tyreek Hill, and his connection with Mahomes is insane. You can't stop him as the fastest guy in football. So you could do worse than betting on him. Pick 15, Nick Chubb, someone that, the best running back in the league. If you're just talking about just running the football, runs behind and a great offensive line, may be more involved in the passing game this year. We'll see. Depends on how active Kareem Hunt is. But Chubb, when healthy last year, was a top 8 running back in half PPR. So I think that he continues that this year. He's only going to get better. He secured the bag, so no worries about Chubb. I think that he'll have a big year.
Yeah. Next up, I got Stephon Diggs. I think he's going to be the main guy once again for Josh Allen. There isn't really many people to compete with targets in Buffalo. I think Gabe Davis is a great wide receiver 2-3 option, assuming that Cole Beasley doesn't see that much time on the field, or they brought over Emmanuel Sanders, but we know he's old as hell. So this is really Stephon Diggs' time to soak up all the targets. And I think you could probably argue he could be in that wide receiver 1 overall territory, along with Calvin Ridley and Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. But, to get him in the second round, I think that's right where you want to get a mid second round. And he could easily be one of the most productive wide receivers this season.
So my next pick is Najee Harris. And I'm a little on the fence about this. There are better players, quote unquote, on the board. You got a Calvin Ridley's right behind him, Darren Waller, Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. I'd be happy with any of those guys. It depends on who you pick with the first pick and how you want to address your roster. My thing about Najee is the upside of him with the amount of volume that he could potentially get, and the fact that the Pittsburgh offensive line has looked a little bit better in preseason. The reports out of camp that they're a little bit better. With the amount of wide receivers that they have, he may not face these boxes. And if he gets 300 carries this year, he's going to be close to what Derrick Henry's producing. The value of getting a guy like this in the late second round where he could produce a top 5 back, it's a little too hard for me to pass up a running back with that sort of upside versus a DeAndre Hopkins or Justin Jefferson here.
Yeah, it's a good point. And the only thing that kind of worries me about Najee Harris is just the strength of schedule, man. This guy's got a brutal schedule on top of just playing in one of the toughest defensive divisions in football. So, but at the same time, he's competing with Anthony McFarland for targets or for competition in terms of running back share. So, Benny Snell, we haven't really seen much out of him in the preseason. So I think there's a really good chance that Najee Harris is going to flirt with 300 touch territory, which is exactly what you want for a running back. So I think there's a lot of upside here, as well as calculated risk, just being in a tough division. So Calvin Ridley, man, the slide can't go any further. I think this dude's a beast, and I don't know what the trend happened that I just wound up taking all the wide receivers in the second round, but yeah, the Calvin Ridley experience is real, and there's not going to be many people to compete with him. It's really going to be Kyle Pitts and Russell Gage. But we saw when Julio Jones went down last year that Calvin Ridley could prove to be a wide receiver one talent. And with the Falcons projected to be only like a 5 or 6 win team, this team's going to be playing from behind all the time. So Matt Ryan's going to have to throw it a lot, and that's good news for Calvin Ridley. So I think you'll see him definitely for with double-digit touchdowns as well over 1,200 yards receiving, which should put him in very good placement amongst his peers at the top of the wide receiver class.
All right. Second to last pick of the second round, I'm going Darren Waller. Again, the tight end value is so great if you have a good one. He's the best receiver on the Raiders. Their defense stinks. They're going to throw the ball a lot. I think it's another big year for Waller, assuming health, obviously. But I think that him and Kelsey are far, far ahead of all the other tight ends behind him: Kittle, Hawkinson, so on and so on.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. This one was kind of hard for me. There's a toss up between D-Hop and Justin Jefferson here. And I'm leaning D-Hop mainly just because I'm really excited for what the Kingsbury offense is really going to bring this year. And Kyler Murray, we saw his connection with D-Hop last year before he hurt his AC joint, and D-Hop was the best receiver in the league. So I think that just because AJ Green came over and they drafted Rondale Moore, I don't think that that's really a huge threat to his target share. I don't know if he got vaxxed or not, but he's probably going to need to figure that out. But other than that, I think I feel pretty confident getting D-Hop, all the way in the back end of the second round. If that happens, consider yourself lucky, because I think the upside there is tremendous with such a great quarterback and system that the Arizona Cardinals have.
All right, so you took Justin Jefferson after that. Obviously, I mean, he's a stud. What are your thoughts on him this year?
Stud, man. And I think, BC Johnson went down with an ACL tear. So that's definitely going to hurt, their other wide receiver corps. And so really, Adam Thielen had a ton of touchdowns last year, 14 of them to be exact. And you got to expect some negative TD regression there. And that's either going to go to probably Irv Smith or Justin Jefferson. And I'm banking on Justin Jefferson here. So to imagine you compare that 1,400 receiving yards with, 10 to 15 touchdowns, man, the sky's the limit. So, yeah, I have a lot of faith in Justin Jefferson here and feel really good about taking him early third round.
BC Johnson, I mean, you're forgetting about Amir Smith-Marset, who's going to be the greatest sixth round rookie receiver in the history of football. Come on, man. Oh, I actually really like him for dynasty leagues, but that's about it. So my second pick in the third round, DK Metcalf, for obvious reasons. I mean, he's the number one receiver on Seattle. If they let Russ cook, he has wide receiver one upside. He's got to get in the end zone a little bit more. Maybe Lockett gets injured. We'll see. But I love DK Metcalf. Taking him over A.J. Brown was tough, but I think that ultimately, given the fact that Julio's there, that's the right decision.
Yeah, good tease. And I like A.J. Brown here because I think he's going to command the most targets. Even though Julio Jones is there, we know that he struggled to stay healthy. He always plays through injuries. But I think we've seen Ryan Tannehill really step up as a bona fide quarterback that deserves your attention. And now that he's got a couple weapons now, I don't think we'll see defenses flock to A.J. Brown as much. This should actually only open up more opportunities for him in the passing game. So I'm really excited for A.J. Brown this year. I think you got to grab him in the third round.
All right, next up, CEH. I think it's a bounce back year for him. I think he's going to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. And, you get a running back that has top 10 fantasy upside in the middle of the third round. You got to pounce on it, especially if you're going to go zero RB. You could do worse with zero RB than having CEH as your number one. I guess that would be more hero RB, but not really quite. If you went like Kelsey, Calvin Ridley, CEH, I would feel pretty good about my start to my team. So you could do worse than getting him in the middle of the third round.
Definitely. And next up, man, this is really tough. And I think now that I'm thinking about it and looking at who you have as the next guy, I kind of could flip CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen here, because CeeDee Lamb, I think you're going to probably, I don't think he's going to last to the third round, to be honest. In most redraft leagues, the hype is built so much around him, and his upside is just, I mean, through the roof. So, but I picked Keenan Allen here, so let me defend that. Keenan Allen, year in, year out, this guy continues to deliver. He's shaken that injury-prone label that he had for much of the early start of his career. He's got a great quarterback in Justin Herbert, who's always going to look his way. I don't know that we can rely on Mike Williams for a full season, and Austin Eckler either. So, ultimately, I think it's going to come down to who is the ball going to go to when they need it most for a third down and potentially for touchdowns. And you're looking at Keenan Allen there. I think you can't miss. He's not a sexy pick, but he's Mr. Reliable and has a very high floor on a weekly basis.
I mean, Keenan Allen in PPR is just an absolute monster. The problem for him in terms of, look, we're talking about the best of the best right now. So we're really picking hairs. If you have Keenan Allen on your team, great. But his depth of target, like he averages like 10 yards. Like it's not that much. And he just needs to get in the end zone more. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen. Maybe if Mike Williams is injured, Herbert's going to be great, but they might go to Austin Eckler a lot. There's J.R. Cook and Donald Parham, who are basically useless until you get to the red zone, who will get targets down there. So it's not like Keenan Allen's going to have 14 touchdowns. So that it just limits his upside a little bit, which is kind of why I would take Lamb over Allen, just because, I mean, I've talked about CD ad nauseum in every single podcast that we do. Like, I feel like I'm going to have to get like a CD Lamb tattoo at some point this year. He's a monster, man. And, you saw it in his rookie season. Dak's back. They're going to throw the ball all over the field. He's super dynamic. I could see drafting him in the second round. I would have no problem with that. If you said that CeeDee Lamb was going to outscore DeAndre Hopkins by 50 fantasy points, you'd be like, okay. Like, I'm not that shocked. He's going to be awesome as long as he's healthy. So, you can't take Lamb high enough for me. I don't know where that point is yet. We haven't hit it.
It's getting there. It's definitely getting there. So next off, I'm going to get Allen Robinson. And I think you could also have him in that same conversation around where you're selecting Keenan Allen and CeeDee Lamb, because he's year in and year out. Again, he's with shitty quarterbacks. This guy delivers. And, not that much help around him. I think Darnell Mooney has proven to be, or at least he's at least seeming to be, one of the best opposite receivers he's had with him. But still, I think Allen Robinson is going to be the main piece of their passing offense, whether that be Andy Dalton or Justin Fields. And, there's not a lot to really be desired there. But one thing's for sure is that Allen Robinson is going to be targeted early and often, probably going to command double-digit targets per game, and always delivers in PPR, half-point PPR. Would like to see more touchdown opportunities, but I think that could happen when you have someone more explosive in the offense, like Justin Fields, or perhaps the team gets down and Andy Dalton just does his usual show of, I'm going to throw for 300 yards and throw 3 touchdowns with 3 picks. More or less the same thing of Andy Dalton that we know all too well. But either way, Allen Robinson is going to cook.
Love Allen Robinson, especially if Justin Fields gets cooking there. My pick in the third round with the A slot, Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. He's got Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's all I need to say. He's got a real quarterback who's going to throw the ball down the field. And he was already awesome last year. He's got speed, great route running. He gets a couple more touchdown opportunities this year, and you're looking at a top 10 wide receiver. I think his volume is going to be insane. And you could do worse than taking McLaurin this season.
Yeah, this offense is going to be a lot better. So I think just by the nature of that, hopefully they're going to be on the field more, not as reliant on the defense. McLaurin should definitely feast. And finally, I get to talk about a running back, DeAndre Swift, next one on the board. And really, this is about sheer opportunity, man. There's not much behind him. Jamal Williams, we know what he is. And really, you're playing with Jared Goff, who I can't imagine he's going to be throwing the ball downfield too much, because he doesn't really have many options to do that. So, I really think that leaves a lot of opportunity for DeAndre Swift to just be a beast here. He's going to demand the carries, and he's also going to be active in the passing game. So at this stage, there's not a lot of sexy names here that are really going to give you the dual threat capability out of the backfield. So DeAndre Swift, to me, just given how bad the Detroit Lions are going to be, like, they're probably going to be the worst team in the NFL here. And so that positive game script is only going to bode well for someone like him.
Yeah, absolutely. Last pick of the third round, J.K. Dobbins. And the difference between Dobbins and Swift in terms of my rankings is very slim, even though they're very different players who are going to go about getting fantasy points in very different ways. Dobbins is going to average over 5 yards a carry. Every running back that goes with Lamar does. The question is, how much does Gus Edwards cut into what Dobbins has going on? I think a little bit, but if he's your second running back, you're in a great position. I think that he's going to have, like I said, 5 yards a carry, probably 1,000 yards rushing. He'll probably have double-digit rushing touchdowns. He's not going to catch the ball much out of the backfield. So think about him as maybe like Nick Chubb light in terms of drafting him. But I think that his potential is, pretty high this season.
Yeah, you can't not bank on the Ravens offense, especially at a running back. And I think you're right. The only question is what kind of volume is he going to see in that offense? But either way, I think he showed that he's going to be a very valuable piece to their offense. All right. You got a back-to-back. You got a little DJ Moore action.
I like it. Like DJ Moore this year. He was great last year. I don't know what the quarterback situation is going to bring with Darnold and Robbie Anderson, Terrence Marshall there, and Christian McCaffrey's back. So that's actually why I have him a little bit further down the board than I did last year. That being said, I think that, if he catches more balls this year, he makes things happen when he has the ball in his hands. It's all about scoring more touchdowns for him and then breaking off these big ones. I think that he's a solid wide receiver 10 to 15 this year. I don't think that his upside is anywhere you're going to get a top 5 receiver season. But I also think that, he's not going to have a wide receiver 30 season either. He's going to get the ball enough where he's going to make stuff happen. And as your wide receiver 2, I think he would be awesome. If he's your wide receiver 1, you might be a little light at the position.
That's fair. Yeah, and so next, I'm going David Montgomery. And, I'm surprised that he's that far down. There's a lot of pundits that are saying like, oh, well, the Bears had a great strength of schedule at the end of the season. He just took advantage of it. Well, I mean, that's okay. He proved that he was able to beat up on talent despite how easy it may have been. He produced, and fantasy is about production. And this guy went for over 1,500 total yards last year and double-digit touchdowns. So with that kind of volume and potentially with a really explosive offense when Justin Fields gets inserted in there, that's only going to help him. And there isn't much help behind him. Damian Williams sat out last season due to COVID. And then we haven't heard a peep from Tariq Cohen in a while, and he's coming off a pretty bad ACL tear. So if we're talking about volume, this guy got 300 touches last year. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't replicate that. And if you're talking value, like he's a solid RB2 that has RB1 upside just based off of the sheer volume that he's going to be getting.
All right. Next pick I have is Patrick Mahomes. And the reason that I took him here was because this is the pick that I took Kelsey with in the first round. I love that stack. If you're going to take Kelsey in the first round, I would do, really, really aggressive drafting if you have to go get Patrick Mahomes and make that situation work. It's not that you need to if you take Kelsey in the first round. I just think that it adds so much value to your potential upside that it's something that you should consider strongly doing. So that's why I have Mahomes here. If I hadn't have drafted Kelsey there, I definitely wouldn't have taken Mahomes in this position.
Yeah, at some point, someone's going to have to pull the trigger on a quarterback here. So not mad at that it's Patrick Mahomes if you're going to do it. The next guy has also gotten a little bit of disrespect, and that's Chris Carson, primarily because, he's had some injury issues for sure, but I think Seattle did a great job of trying to bolster that line. They have a new offensive coordinator that should make this offense a little bit more geared towards Russell Wilson. And we see that Chris Carson doesn't always leave the field. So, he definitely has some receiving potential there on top of his already beastly red zone looks and touchdown opportunities. So even if we see Russ really expand this playbook and get the ball out to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf more often, Chris Carson's still going to eat. And I think he's a really good running back here that has solid RB2 value with RB1 potential certain weeks.
All right, next pick I have is Josh Jacobs, someone that every single person in the fantasy community hates this season. So
hates him.
Yeah, maybe not the best pick, but based on my projections, he still looks like he's going to have 1,000 yards rushing and close to 10 touchdowns this season, even if he's not involved in the passing game. Yes, they have Kenyon Drake, but this is a team, again, their defense is going to stink. He's going to be involved. They're going to run the ball. He's going to be more involved in the passing game just because he's going to be in on downs. Kenyon Drake cannot play every down. All he does is produce, and when he's in the red zone, he scores touchdowns. So in the 4th round, I'm okay getting him. I'm not going to pay 2nd round value or 3rd round value, but if he drops to you, at some point you have to say, okay, every fantasy analyst doesn't like him this year, but he slid past his ADP. I have to take him. It's just good value here.
Yeah, can't argue with that, man. And, really, I just got an alert on my phone probably about an hour ago that Kenyon Drake was limping to the locker room or limping to the tent or something like that. So, if that happens, that was the insurance policy for the Raiders, and it was an expensive insurance policy. Would they give him 2 years, $11 million guaranteed? So I think that if you look at the bag, they certainly wanted to involve him in the offense. But I mean, just look at the sheer. I mean, he's still super young, and we know what he can do. He just doesn't. He's not that active in the passing game, but he's going to tote the rock. So just off the red zone opportunities alone, Josh Jacobs is still a very valuable running back. So I'm going to go next. I'm going to go back to San Fran here and select George Kittle. I think that's, there's been a whole round without drafting a tight end. So I think it makes sense to scoop up Kittle as that next tier of tight end here. I think, Kelsey and Waller are kind of in a league of their own. And Kittle would definitely be with them if it wasn't for his health concerns. But if we're looking for the number 1 target in the offense of San Francisco, I'm putting Kittle still over Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel just based off his pure yak potential, man. This guy gets air yards. He'll take a 12-yard comeback pass to the house. So he's just a beast. And frankly, he's got a really good rapport with Garoppolo. And even if this isn't Garoppolo's team for very long, I think Trey Lance will find a way to get the ball into his hands. This guy's a playmaker and should certainly be at least the 3rd tight end off the board in fantasy redraft.
All right, we got 4 more picks on the board. Next up, I got Mike Evans. All he does is put up 1,000-yard seasons and score touchdowns. 4th round, wide receiver 2. Great. I don't have to worry about Mike Evans ever. Tom Brady's only going to get better in the 2nd year of the offense. Yes, they have AB and Chris Godwin. They got 18 tight ends that can all produce, but the number 1 guy is still Mike Evans. I have no concerns about him as my wide receiver 2, so I'll go ahead and take him here.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad pick at all. And to expect any regression, man, I don't know. Like, seems like he's got a really good rapport with Tom Brady. He's definitely looking his way for the end zone as well as the consistency. So, yeah, just to stay in Tampa Bay, I think Chris Godwin. It's hard to project both of these guys, man. They're probably going to cannibalize each other in some weeks. Someone might go off and then the next guy goes off. But I think Chris Godwin's still going to have a really good season here. He's going to be the reliable slot receiver that Tom Brady always seems to hit. You can move him all around the offense. So even though the Antonio Brown is there, I think there's still a lot of potential here for Chris Godwin to have a great season. In only 12 games, he had 840 yards. So extrapolate that out over the course of a 17-game season, and you're looking at another, 1,200 yards, potentially 10 touchdown type of receiver here that could easily slide as a wide receiver too.
All right, second to last pick. I'll take Julio Jones. I mean, if he's healthy, he's still one of the best receivers in football. I know A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry are there, and they may not throw the ball as much as they did in Atlanta, but as my wide receiver too, you could do worse than having Julio Jones. Hopefully the red zone thing comes back. Maybe he catches less passes and has less yards this year, but he scores more touchdowns. I think that's within the realm of possibility, so I'll take a chance on Julio here.
I like it. And to wrap it up with the Mr. Insignificant, or probably still significant because we're only talking 4 rounds here, but I'm gonna go with Bobby Trees, aka Robert Woods. I think he's in a good offense now. He's always been in a good offense, just had a shitty quarterback, and he still produced year over year. And now that you got Matt Stafford into the fold with Sean McVay, with Cam Akers also out of the picture, this is going to be more of a throwing, passing offense, even though Darrell Henderson has proven to be a capable back. I think we're going to see a really good season out of Robert Woods, considering this is probably the best quarterback he's ever played with since joining the NFL. So him and Cooper Kupp, I can kind of have them interchangeably, but I think they're both going to have really good seasons.
I have Robert Woods as my wide receiver 15, and I think there's a chance he's a top 12 wide receiver with Matthew Stafford this year and in that Rams offense. So I'm with you there. That does it for this episode of the Champions Round Show. Thank you for joining us, Dan. As always, thank you for joining us and providing all your fantasy expertise. Go follow Dan and go look at his work on the Action Network. Until next time, we will see you later.